Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of the Teacher Training Academy. And actually, this is the third webinar in the series. As people are joining, the most important element is to use your chat and type in the chat whether you can see us, whether you can see the screen. Okay, you've got the first one, so the chat is working fine. Morning from Argentina, everything is okay. Lima, Peru, good. Nice to see you. Alma, Portugal, Carla, good. Hope you're enjoying the weather. Afternoon from Rome, Ecuador, all good. Panama, nice to have you here. Mexico, Bolivia, Jakarta. This is the beauty of internet, and I hope that one day that there isn't the person in the world with this red button called internet off, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here. Bolivia, good. Romania, Kazakhstan, Lithuania. So it's a nice, nice mixture. It shows that teachers are everywhere, and
Yeah.
everywhere in the world we do care about this wonderful phenomenon of our students and exam preparation. So the most important, the chat is working fine, and the chat will be using chat this session. So our presenter will be asking questions. So pay attention, because the answers will be in the chat. If you see there is a Q&A, if you have any specific questions, do ask them in the Q&A. By the end of the session, we aim to devote some time to asking and answering questions. And yet again, hi everyone, for those of you who've just joined, this is the Pearson English Assessment Teacher Training Academy. This is the third webinar in the series. If I could have the next slide, please, because I will just do the small intro. So you've got the agenda, and we started off in March with the perseverance in teaching development. Then we had an online testing about the online testing and automatic scoring and human development. Those sessions are already available if you go to the Teacher Training Academy website. You have a chance to watch the recording. Today we've got Mike Mayer and the role of diagnostic testing in crafting an English language environment. And then we've got following sessions in June, August. So the whole project is a 1-year project. The next slide, please. And we'll be finishing in November with the practitioner experience and Pearson English International certificate. For those of you who are already with us today, you will receive your certificate. There will be a short survey so that you could share your thoughts after the webinar, and you will get a one-pager with a key takeaway and some inspirational sentence from our wonderful speaker. And all you'll get it from me via email. So there will be a survey. Once you do the survey, there will be the next button, and you'll be able to download your certificate. So it's all gonna happen within the next few days after the webinar. And today is the third session. There are 10 sessions altogether. So even if you're the first time, for those of you who attend 7 sessions, by the end of Academy, you'll get a gift pack and you'll be able to earn a wonderful Credly badge. So the digital credential that you can use in your professional development, you can add it to your CV, you can share it via the LinkedIn, and you can use it in your professional development. Okay. And I guess this is the time. Mike, great to have you here, and tell us who you are and why you are so good at what you are doing. How is it so that you became an expert, and how is it so that you got really close with GSE and your history, and then share us your thoughts on diagnostic testing.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat from Panama and from Indonesia, and I'm just interested to know whether or not those people have seen me in person this year, because I have presented in both Panama and Indonesia this year. Is it just a coincidence that there's so many people from Panama? I don't know. Anyway, it's great that so many of you have been able to join. As Bartok said, I'm Mike Mayer. I am the Senior Director for Global Scale of English at Pearson. I have been with Pearson. I've just celebrated 21 years, man and boy, well, man and man. And I joined back in 2003 and headed up Longman Dictionaries for the first 8 or 9 years. So I was a teacher, and then I retrained as a dictionary writer, and then worked on many different dictionaries, joined for Longman Dictionaries, and then in 2003 moved over to the Global Scale of English. And that's the project that I've been working on for the past 10 or 11 years. And so today, obviously, I will be talking a little bit about the Global Scale of English, because we have created that to support teachers both in teaching and in assessment. And I'm going to show you some tools and resources that we've created to make your lives a little bit easier. And the great thing about those tools and resources that I'm going to show you is they're all free. So they will be on our website, and I will share with you a couple of QR codes towards the end, well, at the very end of the presentation. So if you would like to follow up on anything that I've shared with you today, you will have all the information. So as Bartok said, I'm hoping this session will be nice and interactive. I've seen you've all found the chat. I have the chat open separately on my phone so I can monitor it. So why don't we get started? If I can advance my slides. Okay, first question. This might seem like a bit of a strange question, but as a teacher, and you're probably going to say all of these, but for you, what's the most important job for you as a teacher? What's your most important goal when you're teaching your group of students? You can just put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of 3s in the chat. I'm seeing some 4s to make them numbers 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, all of the above. 2 and 4, 3, 3. Okay, great. So I actually think, because we're talking about placement and correct placement today and diagnostic testing, I think that correct placement will actually impact all of these. So you're going to have more motivated students. They're going to have a more enjoyable experience. They will be able to see that they're making progress, and they're going to become more confident in English. So this all starts, I believe, with correct placement. I've got a few more questions. It seems like I bombard you with questions right at the very beginning. So, new question. Do you currently use a placement or diagnostic test at the beginning of your course of study? So either 1 or 2, or yes or no, whatever you want to key into the chat. I'm seeing some yeses, 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 yeses sometimes. Okay, I see a couple of no's, but this group is largely a group of yeses. So you do. So this is for the couple of people who answered no. If you answered no, is there a reason why you don't carry out placement testing? Is it because all your students join the same group anyway, so there's no point? That you don't have a reliable placement test? Or logistically, it would just take too long? Is there one of those reasons there, or for or another? So 1 and 2, 1, all of them join the same group. Okay. I just picked some random possibilities from things that I hear from teachers that I'm talking to around the world. So, okay, I'm seeing that students, you track them from their previous previous courses as well. Okay. No, I don't, but I'd like to. Great, you're in the right place. So, for the majority who said yes, they do take a placement test, what type of placement test do you use? Do you use a paper test and an oral interview? Is it a paper test that you've created or one from another company? Or do you use digital testing? So again, paper test and interview, paper test and interview that you've created. Okay, one person said other. If you say other, feel free to put what the other is in the chat. A lot of paper tests created by the institution. Okay, and that does reflect my experience again of visiting schools and talking to teachers around the world. Thank you. Moving on, we're nearly there. If you carry out a placement test, and most of you said you did, why? Why do you carry out a placement test? To stream your students, decide which group they go into, find out what they already know, to help you plan your course, to find the best teaching materials, or maybe something else. To decide what group, okay, 1, 2, 1 and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, all of the above. Find out what they already know, plan the course. Okay, so a range of reasons. Great. And then the final one, which of these skills do you test? So grammar, vocabulary, listening, reading, speaking, writing, or number 7, if you test all of the above. Okay, 1, 2, 3, grammar, vocabulary, listening. Okay, quite a few people are all of the above. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. Okay, interesting. I think in my experience, a lot of placement testing around the world is 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe not so much number 5, because it often takes resources that are not available. But I'm going to go on to talk about why maybe that's a mistake and why placing people based on grammar and vocabulary might not be the best way forward. Okay, sorry, I forgot my last one. Do you place people on the Common European Framework? Yes or no? So we've got a few yeses, a few no's, always no. Okay, so a mixture, yes and no. Okay, so today, what I'd like to do is talk about placement and how this fits into best practice learning and teaching. I want to talk about how we start the journey to build confidence and then show you how using the GSE you can do that. I'm going to talk about the benefits of placement testing and diagnostic testing. And then at the end, I'm hoping we'll have time for me to show you a few resources that we've developed to help you when you assess your students. So not using a purchased assessment, but how you can use assessment frameworks to help you with your day-to-day in-class assessment, because fundamentally as teachers, you're assessing all the time informally. You're observing, you're listening to what the students are saying, you're seeing what they're writing, you are assessing them. So, best practice learning, teaching, and assessment. Common European Framework, where do you think you fit into knowledge of the Common European Framework? You know it and you use it? You know it and use it to describe your students' proficiency. You've heard of it, but you don't really use it, or you've never heard of it. So would you say you're on the 1, 2, 3, or 4? So I'm seeing 2s and 3s. So you know it and you use it to describe your student proficiency. Couple of people have never heard of it. That's fine. I'm going to talk a little bit about how it relates to the global scale of English. And so not many ones, there's a few ones, but not many. Most people are in the two, I know it a little bit, or they've kind of heard of it, but they don't really use it. Okay, so in the Common European Framework, at the front of the book, it says that the Common European Framework has been developed to support best practice learning, teaching, and assessment. And best practice learning, teaching, and assessment follows this kind of circle that you can see on the screen. So best practice is you plan your lesson, you teach your lesson, you then check what the learners have understood, and where necessary, you repair. So if they haven't understood something, you give feedback and you correct. And in the spirit of what we refer to as formative assessment, so not the end of year assessment, but ongoing assessment, in the spirit of formative assessment, once you've checked and you're monitoring what students are doing, whatever they're doing should inform, the next lesson. So, and I know I've been a teacher, and I know there's often pressure on teachers to finish the book. And so you move unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4, and you keep on going. And in your heart of hearts, you know that is not best practice teaching if students are struggling to keep up and they haven't actually understood something. So in best practice, we plan, we teach, we check, we remediate or repair, and then we replan, teach again, check, and we carry on until we get through to that summative assessment where students need a piece of paper to prove their proficiency level in English. What I think is missing from best practice teaching and assessment, is the placement. Placement is the foundation for best practice teaching and assessment. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you will agree that by establishing solid foundations at the beginning of a course, you are setting students up with the best opportunity to succeed and to learn. Now, how many levels are there in the Common European Framework? And this is not a trick question, just how many levels are there? So you can either put the number 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can put 6, 7, 10, or 11. So we've got number what? So 6, we've got 7, 6, 6, 7, 6, 6, 3, which is 10, 10, 7. Okay, that's got confusing, hasn't it, with these different numbers? But anyway, okay, you are representative of a group of teachers, and most teachers will say there are 6 levels in the Common European Framework. And I usually say to my audience, okay, you know what? I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give you half a mark for saying 6, because out there in the world, everybody thinks, most people think, there are 6 levels in the Common European Framework: A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Okay, those are the ones that have become kind of well known, primarily because there is an A2 exam, a B1 exam, a B2 exam. So people know these 6 levels. However, there are more levels. There were 9 levels, and now there are 10 levels. And there were 10 levels when the Common European Framework released the companion volume in 2018. But even before the companion volume, there were 9 levels. And you can see those levels as A1, A2, A2 plus, B1, B1 plus, B2, B2 plus. And you may well be thinking, oh, yeah, well, that's a detail. Either that's a detail, people think, or they were added in the companion volume. Neither are true. They were always there, but the companion volume made a big deal about them because people had missed them. And it's not just a detail. If I'm sure your experience reflects what I'm about to say, that learners make pretty good progress from A1 to A2. Relatively quickly, relatively easily. Maybe not easily, but relatively quickly. And then trying to move them from A2 to B1 seems to take much longer. And moving from B1 to B2, much, much longer. And we have the impression that progress is not being made and that students are, what we say, plateauing, that their progress has slowed down. And that's not true. One of the reasons why it's harder to move from A2 to B1 than it is from A1 to A2 is that A2 consists of 2 levels. There is more to learn. There is more to do. So it's only one reason, but it is a reason why it takes longer to move between those CFR levels. And then in the companion volume, they introduced the very beginner level, pre-A1. So I'm mentioning that here because this is important when we come to look at assessment. So the Common European Framework, if you know a little bit or not much about it, it was published in 2001, and it focuses on general English. It was developed for adults and young adult learners, so 15 years and older. It was never developed for primary, lower secondary, pre-primary. That was not the target audience. A lot of the information is about speaking. 2/3 of the information is about speaking. And those wide levels, as we say, if we think of them as 6 levels, the wide levels can take many, 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 many hours to progress between. And so it's really difficult to show regular progress if you're assessing using Common European Framework, A2, 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 A2. And then the last kind of sort of problem that was raised with Common European Framework was that actually teachers found the book quite academic and it was quite difficult to implement in their day-to-day teaching, even though it was created to support teachers in their day-to-day teaching. So with the global scale of English, excuse me, we created the global scale of English to really address some of these limitations. And so, oh, excuse me, we've created 5 frameworks, 5 different frameworks for 5 different audiences. The one in the middle is for adult learners. That is the one that is closest to the Common European Framework. And indeed, it contains all of the Common European Framework. And then the academic English is for adults, containing all of general English, but English for academic purposes. And then business English, English for the workplace. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, we have a set of learning objectives for very young learners, for pre-primary learners, and for young learners in primary and lower secondary. And I was talking about the tools and resources that we've developed for teachers to support you in your teaching. We have a database which contains all that information, so all those learning objectives, plus we have grammar aligned to our scale vocabulary, and then a kind of sexy piece of AI-driven technology that will give you the readability level of a text. So if you find a text on the internet, you can paste it in and it will give you an approximate level on the CFR and on the global scale of English about the readability level of that text. But here's kind of a key point to the global scale of English. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the global scale of English is a scale from 10 to 90. And you can see it's aligned to those common European framework levels. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see some quite complicated numbers between minus 5.39 and 3.8. That is the research from the original Common European Framework. So originally before publication, all the learning objectives had a difficulty value between minus 5.39 and 3.8. And so we've taken that scale and we've just mapped it onto a positive scale. So telling a learner that their level is minus 3.23 is not very motivating, and we want to be able to motivate learners. But it means exactly the same as 30, which means it's exactly the same as the beginning of A2. And when you get to 43, you will be B1. But between 30 and 43, we can measure your progress, 30, 31, 32, 33, etc., until you get to B1. And I think I'm going to be coming back in August to talk to you about progress monitoring during the academic year. So I won't say too much more about that now. But the most important thing for you to take away from this particular slide is that the global scale of English is effectively the Common European Framework expressed as numbers rather than A1, A2, A2 plus, B1, B1 plus. So if we look at what these brochures also available online, if you prefer print, they are lists of language functions that people can do at different levels of proficiency. And you'll see the coding there. Anything with a P means that they are new, created by Pearson, and then researched and validated by teachers around the world. And anything with a C means it's Common European Framework, and the A means that it's been slightly adapted. So at Pearson, the way in which we implement best practice teaching and learning is using the global scale of English. So creating placement tests that place people on the global scale of English. We plan our courseware using those learning objectives. And then we have various assessments which help us to check progress throughout the year and then repair. So looking to see strengths and weaknesses and then repairing when there is a problem. And as you can see there, placement is key to starting off this best practice teaching and assessment. So one of our goals when creating the global scale of English was to build learners' confidence. We know learners are not confident. And so how do we do that? Well, to start with, little activity. If there are any future dictionary writers in the audience, how would you define confidence? What does confidence mean to you? It's quite tricky. I know that's a lot of writing you're going to have to do in the chat, but anybody going to give me, it's about being brave, yeah, feeling secure, great. Anything else? Courage, okay, bravery, well, trust in your own ability, good. Empowered, being empowered. Oh, feeling safe enough to take a risk, great. Sure about what you say, feeling sure, okay, thank you. Trust. So this is not my definition, this is from somebody way more intelligent than I am, but defines confidence as a combination of hope, optimism, and resilience. So if resilience is a new word for you, resilience just means that ability to keep going even when things are difficult. And as you all know, as language learners yourself, language learning takes a long time, and we will make mistakes, but we need to build resilience and that belief that you can be successful and reach your goal. Okay, so that is what we're trying to, that's the feeling we're trying to instill in our learners. And when it comes to learning English, we survey learners regularly, and we know that a lot of the reasons why people are studying English are what we call high stakes. So they are really important life goals. They open doors. They make certain things possible that would not be possible without a particular level of English. Getting a good job, passing that exam, getting a visa to move to another country, getting into university. A lot of really key life goals are associated. And when something is really important, there are a lot of emotions involved. And so when we surveyed learners around, well, what emotions do you feel when you're learning English? Yeah, of course, there were some positive emotions and that sense of achievement when you've succeeded and excitement when it's new. But I have to say, a lot of the emotions that came through were negative, and you can see some of those on the screen there: frustrated, embarrassed, foolish, silly, imperfect, misunderstood. So again, we know that these emotions, we can't get rid of them. They are inevitable, but we need to manage them. Okay, so that they don't have too big an impact on, um, you know, people's success at learning the language, because research has shown negative emotions have a negative impact on the outcome of your learning goals. So this year we've just published a report, and you'll get a link to the report at the end, about the importance of English and how students feel, how learners feel. So these were people who'd left formal education. They were already at work, but needed to learn English for their work. And so in that survey, what percentage of people do you think said they felt confident in all four language skills? So A, B, C, or D, do you think 25, 35, 45, or 55% felt confident using all of those skills? Okay, a lot of people going for A or B. So there's a general feeling it's going to be low, and you're right, it is low. So only 1 in 4 people said they felt confident in all of the 4 skills. And I bet you get this one right. Which skill did they feel most confident in? Listening, reading, speaking, or writing? A, B, C, D. I'm seeing some A's, some B's. Okay, a couple of people saying C's and D's, but mainly A's and B's. And it is the what we call the receptive skills. So listening and reading, those skills people felt more confident in. But actually speaking and writing, which are the skills that most people need at work, they were the ones that people felt least confident in. And I said these people had left formal education. Over half of the people felt that they hadn't reached a good enough level of English proficiency as part of formal education. Any thoughts on why? Why do you think they felt, without blaming the teacher, which is always the easy option, but why, what do you think happened at school that meant they didn't really acquire the skills they needed? Okay, so I'm seeing from Anna, okay, not enough speaking, they don't expose themselves enough. Any other thoughts? Lack of practice. Okay, low exposure. Lack of speaking practice was the second most common reason. Okay, lack of motivational teachers. It's always easy to blame the teacher. I'm not seeing the top reason though in the quotes so far. It doesn't reflect real life. Okay, close. Not enough work on their own, lack of basic, not a good English program. Yes, I see the top reason there. And I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, but Agueda Castillo. Too much grammar. We focus too much on grammar and vocabulary. And again, I would say visiting schools around the world, speaking to teachers around the world, this is true, not just in the 5 countries where we carried out the research. There is still quite a focus on grammar and vocabulary. And then the second reason was there weren't enough opportunities to speak in class. And we know there are various reasons why this happens. One reason is class size. If you have a class of 40 students, very challenging to organize speaking activities, much easier to have everybody sitting, learning grammar, doing multiple choice, filling in gaps, very controlled. When I do classroom observations, many teachers want to demonstrate a grammar class. And I get it, because grammar is either right or it's wrong. Speaking is much more fluid and much more difficult to keep track of. And so certainly less confident teachers shy away from the speaking activities. Writing, it takes a long time to correct those papers. So a lot of teachers don't have the time. So they'll focus on things that can be assessed very easily, like grammar and vocabulary and reading through multiple choice. And at the beginning, I think we saw quite a number of people who use grammar, vocabulary, reading tests as a placement test. All I would say there is, what are you teaching on your course? And if you're not teaching those productive skills, speaking and writing, why not? Because those are the skills that employers are looking for and that employees feel they needed, but they weren't really given enough teaching on those skills back in formal education. And so this is a whole webinar on its own, building confidence. But just to give you the high line sort of notes on building confidence. First thing, obviously, place students at the beginning of your course of study, because what you want to do to motivate and to ensure that students are making progress is to constantly work at the right level of challenge. Pushing them a little bit, it can't be too easy, otherwise they will not make any progress. But pushing them gradually so that with your help, with scaffolding, with support, they can do it. And then gradually you start withdrawing the support. You should be setting SMART learning objectives. So SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, time-bound. So these are short-term goals that learners can be working towards that enable them to tick, I can do that, tick, I can do that, and regularly experience success. In number 3, you don't want to get to the end of the year to celebrate any success, because chances are you'll be having failures. You want to be regularly encouraging students to celebrate these short-term achievements on the way to the ultimate goal of being able to communicate in English. And then all of this combines to develop a growth mindset. I'm going to just say a couple of words about that. But quick question for you. So you've given a placement test, and here are your results. Student 1, A2, student 2, A2, student 3, B1. which two students are the closest in level? Which two students are the closest in level? And maybe this is a trick question. And I see nobody's replying, so you're thinking that's too suspicious. Yes, and JJ has just gone with something that is, how would you know? But you've realized that I'm trying to trick you. If I show you this graph, you can see that student 2 is actually high A2, almost B1, and student 3 is a low B1, just really passed from high A2. So if you were taking your Cepher placement test, you would think, I think, that 1 and 2, because they both get A2, are the same level. So you group them together, and then student 3, you group them with the B1 students. But if I showed you the information like this, I think you would see that student 2 and student 3 are actually closer together in proficiency level. So it would make sense to group them together, and then student 1 goes with a slightly lower group. So this is where I was talking about the plus levels of the Common European Framework. They are there. We should be using them to help place students more precisely than just in one of the broad 6 bands. So if you are thinking about planning your lessons, then we know that we want to get these students to like a mid A2, which is 35 to 37 on the global scale of English. They've tested at the top of A1. And we've got our what we call the zone of proximal development, somewhere between 30 and 38. Not too easy, because they're going to think they've mastered English and they won't make any progress, but not too difficult, because they will constantly fail and then they will become demotivated. So if you go to that tool that I showed you, you can isolate this zone of proximal development, select your learning objectives, and you get a list of those language functions which are appropriate to teach at that level. There are 286 at this level. You cannot teach 286, but this is a starting point for teachers to be able to identify skills which are appropriate to teach at a particular level. This is a comprehensive list for every student, every teacher in the world. Your particular context, your students will have certain goals. So you can look down this list and select learning objectives based on your learners' goals. We want to let them experience success regularly. Okay, anybody brave enough to put in the box, complete this sentence? I'm just no good at. I'm sure you've never said it about English, but maybe you've said it about another school subject. Okay, yes, I'm seeing my favorite that I always go with, maths. Yep, maths. Okay, physics. Okay, some of these are sporting, which I think is a bit different, but we won't do that one. I'm just no good at English. That is an example of somebody who has a fixed mindset. They believe, for whatever reason, that they have not been born with the ability to learn English. Now, unless they have a neurological problem, that's just not true. They've learned their first language. They can learn another language. It's not necessarily going to be easy, but they can learn a second language. And so what we want to do is develop growth mindsets in our learners. And a growth mindset is the belief that you can achieve your goal. You can learn English. It might not be easy, but if you work at it and you are resilient and you persevere, you will be able to learn English. And often I ask teachers, So if you're a primary teacher, do you ever hear a primary student say, I'm just no good at English? Generally, that's not the case. It's mainly adults and young adults who say, I'm just no good at English. And one of the reasons why they say that is that they've had bad learning experiences. So they have failed and failed and failed and failed, and that has convinced them that they're no good at English. But I would put it to you that if you have placed your student correctly at the beginning and then worked with them in that zone of proximal development and challenged them just the right amount and monitored their progress and given them feedback and remediated, then they would be experiencing little successes more often, and that helps to develop the growth mindset. So letting them experience success, particularly early on, getting them to reflect on what they're good at and what they're not good at. This is part of lifelong learning. So actually, when you've finished a lesson, how do you feel about ordering food in a restaurant? Do you feel confident? If you don't, why don't you? Let's have another look at it and make sure that you are confident. And giving students feedback and as personalized as possible feedback is one of the keys to learners making progress. And so that's that plan again. This is our connected English learning program, all developed using the global scale of English, which links the courseware and the assessments. And so I know coming up in in this series, there is going to be more of a deep dive into the placement tests, but just to show you that, the placement test is, yes, it gives you a score. It puts you in one of those ranges, B1, B1 plus, A2, A2 plus. Okay. But it is, and you can do it for the class, sorry. But it's also about you as a teacher getting insight into the strengths and weaknesses of individual students. We know it's inevitable that you will end up with a mixed ability class, unless you really have a lot of different levels at your school. Most teachers have mixed ability classrooms, and it's challenging. Yes, I'm not going to be able to solve all your problems, but actually, knowledge is power, right? So this will give you a breakdown so that you are aware that student A is actually struggles more in the reading area than in the listening area, or in the speaking area, or in the writing area. So you get just an initial impression of where individual students are in the class, so that you can monitor that and maybe do some additional work, or just monitor them a bit more closely when you're doing that particular skill. So in this case, reading, this person's above level, but speaking, often they are below level. So why do I think that placement testing is the foundation for best practice learning and teaching? Well, I've put up like my top 8 reasons there. It enables you to tailor learning and teaching and personalization for all your students. It enables differentiated instruction because you're aware from day one of the strengths and weaknesses of different students in your class. Based on where they are, you can then set those goals and start tracking progress. But in order to track progress, you need to know where the starting point is. I believe that this increases motivation of your learners because they will be experiencing little successes along the way. And if they are enjoying it, so the first one about having fun, if they're motivated and enjoying it, then fewer are going to drop out and fewer are going to have that fixed mindset of I'm just no good at English. So it's the beginning of measuring progress. So you need to know where you're starting. And a few of you said, those of you who are doing a placement test, it helps you with your curriculum and lesson planning. And hopefully I've shown you just very quickly there how if you're working in that zone of proximal development and if you're celebrating successes, then it is a way to help build confidence in learners. That's not everything that you need for building confidence. People in the chat were talking about safe environments, you know, the positive attitude to mistakes, etc., etc. There's lots going on, but having this very carefully controlled learning syllabus is certainly one way in which you can help build confidence. Now, we do have time, depending on how many questions we have, but helping you to assess. So as I said, during your classroom activity, your day-to-day work, you're assessing all the time. But it's really difficult, I think, to know how to break down the assessment of the different skills and actually standardizing assessment across all your colleagues and your school. So we don't have time for me to get your input on this particular question, but assessment fundamentally it works on two axes. So you want to know how many different things a learner can do in a language. And for those, we have all those language functions in the can-do statements of the learning objectives. But you also want to know how well they can do those things. So what do we have for those? So again, on the same website, you'll find these frameworks to help describe different levels of proficiency for each of the 4 skills. And to know, how do I know if a student is a high A2 or if indeed they're a B1? I mean, that's quite hard to know. And these assessment frameworks have been developed by assessment experts who work for the big assessment companies. And when you download them, you will get descriptions of performance, like what to look for each of the 4 skills, broken down by the different levels of proficiency, and then the different criteria for assessing speaking. So, you know, their production and fluency, their range of vocabulary, their level of accuracy. Accuracy, particularly at the lower levels, won't always be 100%, but what type of accuracy should you be looking for? So that's just something that we've created to support you in your assessment work. If you are creating your own placement tests, hopefully I've drilled home the point that we should be assessing all of the skills at the beginning of the course, because you should be teaching all of the skills on your course, because those skills are the ones that employers are looking for. I'm going to finish on this slide and just leave those QR codes so that you can get the Global Scale of English resources. You'll find that database and the assessment frameworks and so somebody asking where the PDFs were for the learning objectives. They're on that website as well. And then if you're interested in reading that impact report, what employees said about English in the workplace, you can find that at that QR code. And with that, Bartok, do we have any questions?
Well, yeah, so there's a question how to start using a new type of assessment solution when it comes to placement. From your experience, what would you advise to for a teacher, exam provider who considers using new type of assessment solution in their own institution? How to start?
Well, I think I would
thoughts?
say the first thing is to do the assessment yourself. So make sure you know what that assessment experience is, and then you can talk your students through what the experience will be like. You want them to be performing to the best of their ability. particularly if it's a digital assessment. I would say you need to do that yourselves first so that you can tell the students what to expect, because it might be very unfamiliar to them, and you don't want to be testing their digital skills. You want to be testing their English skills. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is you probably want to, if you're currently using grammar and vocabulary, then maybe you want to just, you can't do everything at once. So maybe you just want to add a speaking component. And if it's not, if it's not a digital assessment, then find time to talk to the learners, even if it's just at the very beginning of the term, just to get a sense of where they are in those skills, which ultimately are the most valuable that you want to be teaching.
Okay, thanks. And if you could reveal any thoughts on the future development, since you've been with the GSC and the assessment, so it's present within the placement solutions. You'll talk about measuring growth and benchmarking as they go by. Can you reveal anything about this potential future development? Where are we heading?
With the GSE, oh, that's a whole other topic that I was just talking about as an event this weekend. But I'm sure everybody is following the AI developments and open AI. And one of the problems with open AI, of course, is that it's just drawing on the whole internet. So, as I said in the conference, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the internet. And so I think without giving too much away, I would say that AI is being looked into by Pearson English, but actually it will be AI filtered through the lens of the global scale of English frameworks, which actually define what we call the domain model. So the type of English you are looking to master, and then as learners interact with the computer, with the AI, and they work towards each of those learning objectives, the computer is recording their performance, and that's building up a picture of the proficiency level of the learner. And you compare the two, and ultimately, I think testing, ultimately, not in my lifetime, but I think testing will eventually disappear, because we will not need to stop, test, teach, test, teach, test. Teaching and testing will just be going on in parallel at the same time, and building up a profile, and probably a more realistic profile of somebody's language proficiency, because any test is only a snapshot of what they do on the day.
Okay, thanks a lot. And the last question, because I find it really interesting, maybe not related with the placement, but there was a question: how can schools and educational system better support English language teachers? Any thoughts on this? How can schools and educational systems better support English language learning teachers?
Professional development. I think as teachers, we need to be lifelong learners. So constant professional development means that teachers will always be up to date with the latest developments. And that, of course, means, freeing teachers up for the time to do professional development, because they're already doing a lot. But yeah, I think ongoing development is the best way to get the most out of your teachers.
Okay, thanks a lot. So big thank you for all the talk, all the presentation and insights and elements and ideas. So I hope that you've shared your heart what it is about the assessment, the placement, the role, and those teachers' presence will have a same and yet different look at the role of the assessment and the placement of students and the importance of this element. The next session will be very down to earth, I would say, because what we'll do is we'll talk about the practicality of implementation, the level tests within the institution. So if you are a teacher, exam provider, or you represent the institution and you want to learn from the experience, what are the steps you need to take one by one? What are the challenges and how to overcome those challenges when it comes to the implementation process? Then the next session will focus on those down-to-earth practical elements, like I want a good solution and I want to introduce it within my language school, my class. What steps should I take in the first place to make it work? So this is the practical element. The next session, so we'll have Mike with us again, talking about the role of progress. So his insights, why should we look into the progress as students go by in their learning journey? So please make sure to book your place within the session, and you will get the certificates and the survey via email. The recording will be available on the Teacher Training Academy website. And Rocio Jimenez, you wrote something about the badge. Once you get an email with the survey, please reply to this email stating your situation. We can make it work. So this is the one personal information. Thanks a lot for being with us. Thank you, Mike, for delivering the session.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day and see you soon next month on the next Teacher Training Academy session. Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.